Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to the Sunday Open with Nick4aTick. I'm your host, Nick. Good to see everybody. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and hanging out with me here this evening. Why is the feedback in my mic so loud? Hopefully that is better. I'm sorry if I just screamed at everybody, by the way. I just noticed the gain on my my mixer was for some reason all the way to the top. That's what I get for dusting my desk. So hopefully that sounded okay. How are we all doing? Happy Sunday. How did everybody feel about their weekend? I am in the midst of I guess my first time doing beef ribs. I was inspired by Big Cat himself, who I did see in the chat, to smoke some beef ribs. So I will be enjoying those lovely decadent pieces of meat shortly after this stream. So hopefully it all turned out well. Fingers crossed. I had to task the wife with taking them off and resting in probably the next 5 minutes. They were almost to temperature, and I left it. It's in God's hands at this point that they're going to turn out great. She's responsible for putting them in the Yeti and allowing them to rest in time for dinner. So hopefully everything goes well there. But that was the highlight of my weekend, is basically doing that, spending some time with the baby, and just kind of laying low. Pretty decent weekend. How about everybody else? Anybody do anything fun before we dive into these markets? Fatfish, they take, I'm learning it's basically like doing a brisket. It's a long smoke, and you just got to let them come to temperature and let them rest the right way, but definitely not even as short as pork ribs. They take a little longer, apparently. So learning curve here, but we'll see how they turn out. I'm very optimistic that they should be pretty good. So without further ado, let's get to the charts. So if you have never seen this show, if it's your first time hanging out with me on your Sunday evening, this is a light prep to help get you guys organized and prepared for the week. We're going to talk about ES, we're going to talk about NQ, CL, and GC, as well as what is on the docket for the economic calendar, what is coming up as far as the major earnings releases for this week as well. And then anything else that's in my mind. You never know when I'm going to go on a tangent about Chipotle earnings, which apparently that short thesis did play out just slightly, but it did. That was pretty entertaining to see the week after I went on my rant that it did in fact have a poor showing in earnings and did finally correct whatever parabolic move it's continued to grind on. So that made me laugh. But yeah, thank you everybody for hanging out. Wanted to turn down. My music was way too loud in my ears. Let's talk a little bit about last week. And I don't know about you guys. I wouldn't say I was shocked by this pullback, but the velocity and how ferocious it was at times probably caught me a bit by surprise. So I guess the elephant in the room is, how did we all do with Thursday and Friday, especially after the absolute monumental move that we saw in the after hours post FOMC, when we had this, Powell once again trying to ruin everybody's summer. We were trading down near July's value area high in the 63.70s. And then, of course, we get a nice rebound off of that. And then Microsoft and Meta just report positive earnings, and we are off to the moon. Or was this some sort of like blow off top little last gas of the never ending summer rally? And now it's finally time for the market to return to normalcy, return to a way in which we continue to move up over a long time frame. But there are these reflexive little corrections to clean up structure and kind of retest breakouts. And I say that because as I was doing this prep and kind of looking at this, something I noticed was the point of control from the year-to-date volume profile is sitting a touch lower, to be honest. It's sitting down here. I'm going to give it like a 40, 50 point range because I did this on ES. So obviously grain of salt with rollover and things, but it was sitting down almost towards the 6,000 area. So a ton of volume basically traded I guess back in this old balance range that we were in early June. Like that is where the bulk of this year to date volume has taken place. So for us to continue to probably make the inevitable march at some point this year or early next year, maybe to, let's call it 7,000 on the S&Ps, maybe there's a nice retest there. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not ready to, put on the bear hat and just say, everything is it's so over. And, it was never going, we were never so back. This has all been just silliness to the upside. I'm just not ready to to buy too much of this outside of a very healthy correction after what was a never-ending grind up since Liberation Day. So I see this is very positive. I had a lot of fun the last 2.5 days of trading, going back to FOMC and trading the close. But just looking at this, I guess, optimistically, as far as this being potentially a good thing for the market to obviously continue higher. You want to see these things happen. You don't want to see us just make a new high, slightly balance in a tight range, and then continue just to burst to the upside. I like seeing these type of corrections because it gives me reasons to buy in my retirement, other things when we get these nice little, let's call them 3 to 5% pullbacks versus me hoping my 401k is not buying up here at the 6,400s after missing, let's say, the the lows in the 5,000s. So I always love when we do this. It sometimes catches me off guard even, and I'm not quick to react because I'm in such a buy the dip motion where if you get that excess kind of low or you peak below the previous week's volume profile, like I might be looking to buy after we make those kind of XF lows, and because you see a lot of moves like this where you just kind of get a crazy 1 hour wick and then we're off to the races once again. So I love seeing stuff like that. So for me personally, looking at this week after last week, am I saying the bloodbath is over? Not at all. I think we're very much at a kind of inflection point, at least in the early part of this week, where I kind of want to see what sellers are made of. Do they have the cojones to push us down below this magic blue box, which once again seemed to act as the bottom in NQ and ES? If you remember, and we'll talk about NQ too, but I was screaming for the last few weeks of kind of watching that 800 spot, just given how much volume had traded there and how it was very much the bottom of the balance area that we were kind of in for the last few weeks. And that would really be, and then it got very slippery below that. The same thing is true for this 6240 spot on ES. So, and more specifically, I'm moving my pivot a touch lower because I don't want to see us just kind of kiss this, the bottom edge of this, the very bottom edge of that balance area going back to early July. But all we basically did in the last 2 sessions is retrace all of July's volume, which when you kind of think about it is pretty crazy that in that's basically 2 trading days, you erase 20 days of nonstop kind of consolidation and buying the all-time high and selling it at the all-time higher. So for me to get too bearish, I really want to see us maybe with a day close below this balance area, kind of inside, ideally inside of 6230s. But if it's a touch higher, I'm just not ready to kind of join Team Bear and say that the sky is falling and that it's so over. It just seems like it may not be that simple. But what I like to look at is if we were to, let's make this a little tighter just so we can fit everything on screen, since now we are talking about maybe some prices, us exploring prices, perhaps a touch lower. Well, I said this on NQ. ES is not necessarily a better story. If you guys remember this kind of last week in June that we had, and then going into the 4th of July holiday, you had this kind of trend week where it was pretty poor structure. I think I got my butt handed to me a little bit this week because I kept waiting for us to kind of come retest some of these spots, and it just never came before we kind of got back into our usual consolidation, maybe retest the low. Like that was just an outlier week where we make that drive higher. And What I'd like to see is potentially, if sellers really want to show me something, is us break below or have a day close kind of below 6230s. And then maybe we clean up some of the structure and return to this terrible looking balance area back here towards what would also lead me to what I was saying earlier, the point of control year to date, which is sitting somewhere in this vicinity, depending on how you back adjust, or if you don't back adjust, or if you're looking at SPX, like you'd find a very high volume node just kind of sitting in the 6050 to 6000 area. And you can kind of see it just based on all what we did in May and June, all of this lovely volume that was traded down there. So in the event that sellers are for real and we kind of break below this, I would say all bets are off for me to really look too much at longs outside of, intraday and looking for rotations and things like that. But I would expect if we lose this spot that there's a high probability we're probably going to close this RTH gap down here, as well as kind of play around near that point of control year to date. It just kind of makes sense. I'm not saying it's going to happen this week that we're just going to waterfall. We already waterfalled 200 points. Are we going to waterfall another 200 points? I don't know. We'll see what narratives and what more talking heads have to say this week out of the White House when we're firing people that I always laugh at this because you have a poor jobs report on Friday, and I think a lot of us that are done streams and are I guess in front of the camera sometimes, like I remember even thinking going back to CPI and some of the things, and they change the way the data is calculated, and you just kind of say like, not that the data is manipulated, but then you see the revisions. It's just like, what are we doing here? Why is everything so off the rails as far as analysts and things like that? How do you miss that badly? And then how is it revised so much? So that always makes me scratch my head. So we'll see what comes out of data land this week with things like that as well. And we'll talk about that shortly, but I would say we might need we'll see how the open here is in 2.5 minutes, but I'm not expecting like fireworks and massive continuation to the downside tonight, but we'll see how this week kind of unfolds. It's just basically how we kind of closed. And I think I was expecting like maybe there was going to be a nice pushback up to retrace some of the volume on Friday. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting week. I'm optimistic that volatility is here. And if you believe in seasonality, it's the time of the year that it would happen, and there may be a correction in the market. I'm not saying we're going back to Liberation Day lows, but I would love to see a healthy pullback, maybe back towards the point of control year to date, something that makes sense. So we'll see about that. But we're coming into about 2 minutes for the open. There is a lovely poll in the chat for you all, and it's the question that I usually ask here on Sunday nights, and that's, how are we going to open? And I would expect something a little fun, but maybe not too crazy. Let's see. So far, everybody voting, we have 45% saying, 44%. saying gap down, 16% saying flat, and 40% saying gap up. I'm going to be on team, I guess, small gap down, maybe. I don't know. This might be, like I said, I think it's going to be interesting open. I'm not expecting too much, but I'm curious to see what the kind of initial knee-jerk reaction coming in here on Sunday after the bloodbath of a day really is. I could see us... what's kind of the bottom of that little consolidation we were sitting in NQ, like 860s that we were kind of ping-ponging around, maybe a little lower, 835s, 840s. Yeah, so anywhere, I think a touch lower than kind of where settlement was, I guess, but we'll see. So yeah, let's see. We got 30 seconds. Let me go back into the chat. I know I was in my usual opening of this show ramble, but just quick peek at what everybody's saying in the chat. Leo says 850s, a 5,000 point drop hyper would be that'd be very violent. CPI is frequently revised because they use 3 different measurements. I know I have my own bone to pick with CPI, but we are 5 seconds from the open, so we'll watch it on my execution chart for ES. Small gap down on ES. NQ. Oh, Leo, Can we just start the rumor now that you've been replaced by a market maker? Like I'm pretty sure the white van guys are not happy with you that you just gave away the week open. Like if you missed it, he did put that in the chat prior to us actually hitting the Globex bell here, and he said 850s. So that white van is currently outside Big Cat's house himself, and we wish you well. I'm supposed to be trading the open tomorrow with him. We'll see if he shows or if he's been replaced by somebody that we'll meet in the near future. But so far, gap down, immediately closing it, and currently NQ trading right around 875s. ES right at the point of control from the previous day's session, sitting at 62.65s. So no fireworks really tonight. That gap's already been closed. So at least one less thing for us to worry about. But yes, I'm pretty sure Leo himself is the CME. He actually does the week open. Like he is the week open. We call this show the Sunday Open, but maybe we should name it after Leo at this point, since he just called the Sunday Open. All right. So yeah, on ES, like I said, us potentially. I mean, if we hold this, like if we hold this kind of little high volume node from the previous week, I mean, this is all basically Friday's volume, but the point of control from Friday basically sitting right here. If this week open holds, if my magic blue box from early July, end of June still holds, then by all means, let's go retrace and kind of explore and clean up probably some of the structure even from Friday. But what we basically be doing is back into the 3-week balance range that we were in between 63.50s and the 62.40s at the very bottom. So equally is possible, but I kind of want to see if sellers really step on their foot after these last two sessions, or if they're going to give us something to show signs of life with a VIX over 20 that says, yes, we are going to continue to clean up this structure and perhaps come down here towards the 6100s. That's really what I'm looking for this week, is just, do we see that acceleration? Do we see a little bit of range expansion? And do we go kind of clean up this structure and go retest the top edge of this year-to-date volume structure, basically? So nothing too crazy. I don't think that's too much of an ask. I don't think that's a bearish outlook. I'm just looking after that kind of Thursday and Friday. Do we get any sort of continuation and retesting of, I mean, this breakout move to the all-time highs that we've been in since the end of June? Would love to see that. So at least makes me feel like I can buy certain things at slightly lower prices. I mean, who wants to buy them at 6,500 after almost a 30% run up nonstop? So we'll see. All right. And now immediately NQ reoffering and making a move lower. So that was fun. This could be interesting. And now we're right back up. Anybody trading this? My God. NQ just whipsawing 20, 30 points in a matter of 60 seconds there. That's fun. Fat fish. If NQ gaps down, or excuse me, if Globex closes down, NQ New York gaps up. And if it closes up, New York follows, but then reverses shortly after. I don't know why I think this must be fish sauce. All right, let's jump to NQ. So if you missed a masterclass in trading the bottom edge of a previous area's structure, you missed Kane, Chris, and Leo on Friday. I mean, showing us how to do it, and especially Chris, showing you how to hold a trade with conviction for an entire move, which was just great to see. But who remembers? I mean, if you're here every Sunday, you probably remember me giving the very, I guess, optimistic bear case every single week as we just made the never-ending, one time frame move higher and higher and higher to a new all-time high. It seems like every week. So, but something stood out to me about, I mean, it goes back to the way this structure was kind of that end last week of June, first week of July. I know it was a holiday week, but all of that volume that had traded around that kind of 800 spot, it stuck out to me enough that I kept bringing it up over the last few weeks. And that ended up being last few weeks, basically for the last month plus. But that basically was the bottom edge of this range. I mean, for the last 6 weeks, 5 weeks. What are we in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. So I know I brought it up again last week when we were talking about if we, for some reason, got some kind of range expansion. I just kept always saying, like, okay, in the event that we do get complete Armageddon and move lower, you're watching 22,800s and you're watching kind of the 22,300s. And we talked about the slippery slope. If we were to lose said 800s, then I could very much see this kind of rotating another 500 points lower. So the same thing is going to be true this week, just given where we are trading. If we were to kind of not find a lot of buyers here, this is an interesting kind of LVN on a longer time frame. If you were to draw it, and I just can't do it on a fly quickly here without a ton of data loading, unfortunately, but there's just kind of a big LVN just sitting all here, which either means this kind of 700 spot would hold, hopefully, at the very, very bottom edge, like somebody sitting here trying to knife catch it, or the high probability if you lose this and we start seeing more initiation and continuation from sellers, that we probably go rotate back to the top edge, the similar area that we were talking about on ES, down here, kind of in this 300s to 200 range, which even going back to when we were, in June, that I was talking about is kind of an old balance range going back to the all-time high in January, before we had the Armageddon bloodbath that was Valentine's Day OPEX in February. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm just very much not necessarily using 800 as a pivot, but really watching for initiation from sellers kind of below this 800 spot. Like, do I see them really continuing to just be on the tape and, I mean, just trying to really drive us lower? Like, if you look here, the value area low for July is going to be sitting right around that kind of 790 spot. It just gets a little slippery. And as I said in ES, this week's structure, obviously I said, I think I remember struggling with this breakout as we just really had no pullbacks that entire week heading into kind of the 4th of July, like that pre-4th of July. It's just not the greatest structure that makes me feel like if you lose 8s, that we're not probably going to rotate lower. And perhaps, like I said in ES, come down here towards the 300s. Maybe we get a last gasp from buyers there. But if not, we settle right in towards that year-to-date point of control, which obviously makes a lot of sense after a 30% run up, that maybe we go retest 5% of it. Something that makes sense versus us just continuing to grind higher. And I personally, this week and probably into next week, unless the narrative changes, like, I'm not looking for much lower than that area, to be honest. 22,000s, like, that probably seems like a decent place to reinitiate some longer time frame longs, but we'll see. LVN, sorry, low volume node. My brain just turned off there as I was trying to answer your question. LVN means low volume node. So if you were to draw the volume profile there, you'll see just kind of like something like this, like when we see kind of between 300s and 100s here, just not a ton of transactions took place kind of between this, okay, so if you were to draw this, like, you'd see a lot of volume basically, between kind of the 23,000s and the 800s, and then that point of control at the 800, and then it gets a little slippery is what I mean by low volume node. There's just not a lot of transactions that took place there, which makes sense when we kind of look back to the structure of that week in the end of June. So makes a lot of sense when we were kind of breaking out to new all-time highs, or trying to break out to new all-time highs, that we left some relatively poor structure behind. So we'll see. But that's kind of how I'm looking at this. If not, a good place to watch too is going to be the 23,300s would be the August Open, as well as it was a bit of a pause there during the bloodbath, and kind of where we were trading. I would call it in the overnight in the pre-market on Friday too, before you got that next little initiation from London, and then right off the bell, another lovely move. So I don't know. Friday was kind of a fun day. I It's one of those, or these last 2 days as a day trader who very much doing this full time, I stick to my guns. And if I've had a good early session, I tend to stop. And then I tend to hate watch good trades or scalp a couple good trades for a few points, not looking to catch longer moves, like just very much my own playbook of things. And it's not like I'm like, I have any regrets from the last 2 trading days, but man, I had some great entries that I just didn't fold, but just stuck to my plan. I like just had some great, for example, who remembers the opening range mid from Thursday short? I took that trade for 30 points. Wouldn't that have been a good swing trade? So it's not like I had FOMO. Like I was still kind of engaging and watching with the tape, hanging out with, my trading buddies behind the scenes, doing other things. But when the volatility's there and you get these kind of days, it's one of those where it's like some days I wish, I guess I pressed, not necessarily pressed, but not necessarily went for more either. But there were plenty of opportunities. And that's one of the things I love when we get days like this, where I missed all of the open on Friday, but I was still able to very quickly come in and catch a chunk of that long. Didn't get quite like 820s, I think, in 830s like Kane did, but was able to get a touch higher and, get a decent trade out of it. It had a very good day. I had a very good week last week. So, but I'm just very hopeful that this type of two-way action that you see intraday is here to stay, at least for right now. But yes, hate watch is one of the many things that I do when I'm not trading. And hate watching for me usually comes when it's not like I've like locked down my platform and shut everything off. It's just like I will say to myself, I'm not taking another trade today. I'm done. I'm up a couple grand, whatever it is in the personal account. And I feel good. It keeps the 9 to 5 away type stuff. But I will sit here and, mentally like be my own furu where I'm calling out trades. Then you see it immediately happen and go in that favor. And it's just kind of like, okay, I'm going to hate watch this now because I stuck to my guns. I stuck to my plan and I'm not going to take any more trades. But it happens. The trade, let's say, manifests itself exactly in your mind how you would envision and how you would have entered, and your stop wouldn't have gotten hit and these things. And it's like, there's two things there. One of that is it's good muscle memory of like, okay, it reaffirms that I kind of know what I'm doing, even though I am kind of an idiot, I guess. But the hours that I've spent on charts and taking trades, like it shows that you can still do this. Like you still kind of know what you're doing. Even if you're not having money at risk, you're still able to recognize certain things as they're about to happen, and you would see an entry, things like that. So that's kind of what I like to do when if I've already made money or lost too much money and I'm not putting any more at risk on these type of days. They're just fun to watch. They're good to kind of get in that muscle memory. And if you're going to invest in screen time, like Thursday and Friday are great days to potentially be sitting there and putting a lot of time, at least watching price action, watching the charts, watching how things kind of unfold. Those days will not make you bang your head against the wall comparatively to some of these days that we may have had the last few weeks, where if you were doing that, you were basically watching a paint drying simulator. So that's a good day to even go watch on replay at a little bit sped up if you don't have a seizure with some of that price action. But that's a good learning type of day versus some of these D-shaped profiles for a week like we are seeing here in crude oil, that there's not a lot of learning to really gather, except that crude trades in a range and it's home and that's where it wants to be and will forever be, is in price discovery in a very comfortable place that it likes to sit. So we move on to crude oil. If you take the trade, you lose profits. If you walk away with the profits and still watch the market, you hate trade. I'm good about not hate trading. I'm not good about not hate watching it. That's how I could say it. But it's something I have to live with. I hate watch a lot. Hate watching to me is missing trades that you in theory, like you could take, you should take, but you're just not putting any more capital at risk. So you'll still sit on the charts and message with your friends and watch this program, watch the guys trading in the afternoon or something, but you're not putting any more money at risk. So you're kind of just hate watching the market, at least what I call it, especially in a summer trade that we're just grinding up forever. That's a lot of those sessions where I was doing the show in the afternoon. I'm almost hate watching it, even though I'm taking a couple trades, small size and things. But anyway, so crude made a valiant attempt to break out of this multi-week balance last week. And I think it's kind of something that I was talking about last Sunday, was looking for longs kind of in this 65s. I think I said as low as maybe the 64.70s that I'd be interested in getting long. So for me, this was constructive of us potentially leaving the forever home that is 70s to 65s in crude oil. But Friday's price action and us driving back to the very tippy top of this new kind of auto plotted balance range from the last few weeks. That's this little gray box that you can kind of see on my charts. We returned to its home comfortably inside of 67s, currently trading gap down in crude, actually at 66.86. So this will be an interesting, I guess, early part of this week. Where do we get another push up towards the kind of 67.30s? This this value area low from last week, and which also coincides with some lovely market generated information from the previous week and previous month, kind of all coinciding right here around that 67.30s level. Will basically kind of act as probably a good, not necessarily pivot for the week, but a good area to watch. Where do we come up here and kind of peak above, and sellers reoffer, and then in which case there probably are some shorts on the table to look for this balance area rotation, perhaps down here, shorting kind of the 67 break towards probably the mid 65s, kind of retesting this. The other equation, or I guess thought of this, would be, do we just get up here and this is kind of a new lower high? We're kind of retesting the top edge of this balance. And does crude make the eventual march up here towards 71s, which was what I was talking about last week? I got very excited kind of in the middle of the week that we were going to do it. And my dreams were shattered, and we rotated right back into the top edge of this range, which in terms of price discovery, I mean, why does crude just has such price stability, between kind of the 65s and 70s? It's permanent home. So it really is, you got to play the edges, but I kind of like this. Like I said, I am not good. I have not, there's something in my bones, and I don't know what this is. Someone could probably analyze me. I have no problem ever trying to short equities. Like, I will jump into a short with whatever justification I can give to myself intraday at times to scalp something short. But for some reason, I can't tell you a time that I've ever taken a crude oil short. I really only look for longs, and I look for longs obviously in equities too. But for some reason, there's something in my bones that just does not want me to ever short crude oil. Something I got to work on with myself, I guess. But it always makes me laugh. So I guess I'm just constantly the oil bull, looking for rotations higher and then then waiting for price to kind of stop and consolidate before I can then once again take a biased long again for some reason, versus taking some sort of momentum short back into balance. Like you probably would have had the opportunity to at some point last week if you were watching this, and you're like, all right, there's probably a decent short back down towards 67s that I could take, because I'm hedging my minivan gasoline exposure. It's very possible. Petroleum products run the world, so maybe that's what it is. I don't want to see crude ever go negative again. And that's the other thing too. It can go negative, and it did in my lifetime. In a time period when I was actively trading, not trading futures, but I was trading. So, I mean, maybe there's that case where there probably is a ceiling on crude, but crude can go negative again. So I don't ever want to see that again in my lifetime, but let's still think about that. So yeah, if we get any sort of reoffer here again towards the top edge of this balance, then yeah, I'd probably, and I'm not, I just don't have in my bones to short 67s down towards 65s, if not the full rotation of this back to the very early parts of July where we were trading at 63s. But that's probably the trade. I most likely would be sitting here trying to be the first idiot to buy the breakout above 67.30s. But we'll see. I kind of like the idea of that. Even after this gap down so far, we're seeing some buyers immediately step in here to start Sunday night. So I'll see where it is in the morning, but I kind of like watching this previous week's value area low here to gauge a reaction. If we're finding no interest in buyers kind of taking us any higher than, let's call it 67.50s, if not as high as probably the 75s, then yeah, it probably makes sense to reoffer this to try to catch that wider balance rotation a touch lower. Miguel, trying to paper trade one contract of the micro S&P. Or for one contract, they're charging me $2,300. I thought one contract was around $117. It depends. I mean, it's paper trading, so I don't know what the full margin right now technically is on one micro. It might be set to regular margin, versus if you were using like a live account with a broker, it would probably be a little lower. I don't know if you're talking about the active margin or what specifically, but that would be my guess. But if you're in a paper trading account, you might, I don't know exactly how it would do that. I don't know if you can set your own margins or what. I don't know if somebody else can help. If it's with NT's paper trading brokerage, yeah, it would be giving you $50 unless then it's tying into higher volatility or is currently running at full margin for some reason. So I'm unsure. Where do you guys go to keep updated with what's happening with oil? I mean, I get random squawks and I pay attention. And luckily there's a lot of smart people behind the scenes on the NinjaTrader live team who tell me when things are happening with the energy products and everything else. So I usually let other people tell me the information. And part of that is I don't trade crude every day. If not, I mean, it's very rare when I take a crude trade, but so if I was actively, like if this was my product of choice every single day, then I'd be a lot more in the weeds with OPEC and, everything else. The inventory numbers, all the other fun stuff that is more in the weeds for crude traders. So, all right. So that's crude. Liquid gold on to the precious gold, which just like crude did, gold broke my heart for me thinking we could possibly break down inside 3,300s. It doesn't seem like that's going to be true. In fact, we went right back to probably what is, if I were to draw a volume profile here, probably to the center of balance going back to early April. I just can't wrap my head around this outside of, I guess, a day-to-day trade. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know why we're doing it. I'm so tired of gold consolidating between this little 100-point range that it has found its home. I just want it to make a decision. And currently, the decision is, once again, to retest the bottom edge of this balance and then go look like it's going to test the top of it. So for the early parts of this week, I'd be watching for any sort of reaction up here around the 34.40s. Do we find sellers once again stepping in? If we get continuation in equities and it's driven by a lot of uncertainty or whatever's going on with more tariff things, then yeah, maybe we see that once again, that kind of fear bid push back into gold, the precious metal that it is, that everybody just jumps to in uncertain times. And maybe that gives us the fuel to go make a new all-time high once again. If not, it seems like we're just range bound and you're probably looking to, fade this in the 34.40s and long it down here towards the 33.50s. Once again, I'm really tired of this range. I feel like we've been I don't know. To my regular viewers, how many weeks have I been looking for us to leave this range? And more specifically, me myself looking to leave it to the downside. I'm so over it. I'm over gold just being tightly wound, probably in a wedge, probably in some sort of balance area that I just don't have the geometric shapes available to currently draw for you all. I'm just ready for it to be over. It just doesn't seem like it's going to happen yet. So looking up here for the upside, obviously looking for any sort of seller's reaction. This little LVN tucked right here around those 34.40s. And in that case, maybe we can sell it down here towards the 33.50s. That's kind of what I'm looking for if there was anything to do here. I have no interest. I spend enough energy trying to understand what equities are doing intraday, and with gold trading in a never-ending range that would make crude oil jealous, I just have no interest in placing a trade. Platinum is the new gold. I mean, it looks like copper would have been more fun to trade. That was the most violent thing I've ever seen in a long time. On was that FOMC? Was it FOMC or was that Thursday? I don't remember anymore. My days are blurring together, y'all. Yeah, copper was very scary very, very quickly. That was kind of insane to look at when you see it drop like 16% in the snap of a finger. Obviously, literally everybody got liquidated. So that's why we use stops, but that's probably a situation where your stop, I mean, still matters, but oh boy, there would have been some slippage. Copper is a scary market, fully manipulated. Yeah, I just don't dabble very much with, I guess, the less liquid futures products at times. It's just like this. I mean, obviously I don't watch them enough. But yeah, I'm very comfortable in my home with equities. Like I said, I dabble in gold. I dabble in some crude. It's probably, 3 to 10 trades a year in both, and the other thousands of trades are going to be in ES and NQ. I trade more GC and CL than I do the YM, which we're going to look at because YM kind of breaking below 44,200s kind of broke this multi-week balance that was a little more interesting than ES and NQ, because rather than just continuing to march to new all-time highs, the YM, the old boomer index, was just continuing to meander before the violence of the last 2 days. Actually, it doesn't look as violent as ES and NQ did, and kind of has, I mean, looking at this, retraced about half of that old week, that last week in June profile that we were talking about in ES and NQ. So YM lagging, YM leading, we'll find out. So far, equities don't want to do anything outside of just kind of meander around the weekly open. But YM loses this 43,400 spot. Oh, no, I guess that is the top of the old all-time high balance. Never mind. I got excited. Maybe there was something there, but I guess maybe that's the logic. Is the YM is the YM leading? Maybe that's the tale that we're gonna be telling in ES at NQ this week, is us rotating to the top edge of that old balance from the end of June. We'll see. I don't know. All right. So we'll recap these in a little bit, but we're going to jump to the economic calendar. And as always, as I'm going through the rest of this, if there are questions, if there's anything else y'all want to ask me, I'm happy to answer whatever it is. You're going to get a lot of me tomorrow on the show. I'm doing double duty. I'm trading the open and trading the close. So you get to see me trade, hopefully take some trades. We'll see what price action says, but that should be a lot of fun to trade the open with y'all tomorrow. What am I doing? Where's my chart? Yeah, YM knew. Yep, it did. It was foretold in the YM. How to make $1 million? Well, I'm always on that quest every day. That's what I'm trying to do. Instead, guy had to replace the 9 to 5 first, and then we're going to continue to grow from there, hopefully. All right. So, earnings this week. We are well past the 2 weeks that was 6 of these 7 Mag 7 earnings, with 4 of them reporting last week. And unfortunately, Tim Apple could not save us from that bloodbath on Thursday and Friday. So we'll see if he does his job the following quarter. No FOMC for 2 months. Yes, we have the Jackson Hole Symposium this month. So there will be no FOMC meeting until September. Which still looks like, with the dissenters and things we were seeing last week coming out of the meeting between Waller and whoever the other person is. I cannot remember off the top of my head who the other dissenter was, but Jackson Hole should be interesting, with the president still saying he's not going to fire him, but basically doing all but calling for his resignation. I don't know. It should be the most interesting Jackson Hole we've had since Powell. Since 2022's Jackson Hole, when Powell thought nobody was taking him seriously, and I still don't think anybody was taking him that seriously for the last couple of years either. But here we are. Mission accomplished. Inflation was defeated in 2023. But we're still dealing with this stuff 3 years later. So anyway, but yeah, no FOMC in August. We have Jackson Hole, and then the meeting will be back September, and we'll see what the Fed funds futures looks like over the next 2 months of everybody trying to see if they're going to actually make a cut or if they're going to hold firm once again. Should be funny. But anyway, on the earnings front this week, obviously we have the last one of the Mag 7 coming in a couple weeks with NVIDIA, but we do have 2 big names in the semiconductor space, with Supermicro and AMD reporting Tuesday after the close. And then 2 organizations that I think made a lot of people a lot of money in the last few months, 6 months, year plus. I mean, I know I have a trading buddy that bought Palantir in the 7s. So what am I doing? But HIMS, as well as Palantir, reporting tomorrow after the bell, which I'm sure a lot of single stock holders and single stock options traders will be just hoping for more continuation to the upside. Yeah, I'm sad that I it's funny. I was ready. I was on HIMS before the run up. I just did not do it. I don't know what it was. I stayed away, and I regretted it like 2 days later. Palantir, I just missed the boat. For the longest time, I was too stubborn to actually look up what they did and how it was all. Yeah, I should have known better. I was working my 9 to 5 at the time. I did a little bit in PubSec, and I should have known better. So I'll beat myself up about that one as much as I do Carvana missing the second run, the second run in Carvana from $4. So yeah, that's the major ones. Obviously, Berkshire Hathaway tomorrow morning. So it should be interesting to see what old Warren has to say coming out of that meeting. Any others? Nope, those are the big ones that I was jumping off. And then Wednesday before the bell, Uber and Shopify should be interesting. Disney as well in the pre-market on Wednesday, and McDonald's, another one I'm going to be paying attention to a little bit. AppLovin, Fortinet, no. Celsius, Eli Lilly, and yeah, pretty light week. Nothing that's going to absolutely move the indices. I was thinking about Carvana too. Oh, that dumpster diving adventure at $4. And there's a time-stamped message to prove it. I mean, it's on my my X. You could dig and find it, but we were talking about it in a Discord because someone was doing TA on it, and I was kind of looking and laughing and thinking, yeah, it's going to zero, or it probably is about to bounce off this little $4 spot right here. And those were my famous last words, as it's made its never-ending, once again, march up to the meme stock euphoria of old, and has, I think, made a new all-time high at this point. I don't know. I stopped looking at it because it was making me mad. Not like I was going to buy Leaps, but I was just like joking that I was going to buy a few $1,000s worth of shares because it kind of made sense. Sometimes those not meme stocks, but sometimes those things that are trending, and nobody's paying attention to, there are those opportunities, and they make weird technical sense. if you look at the chart sometimes to at least take a stab. I mean, what's the worst? I mean, I have lost a few $1,000s in a lot worse trades, and that's easy to say in hindsight, but I think I have blown a few grand in a single day on some very terrible setups versus comparing it to that and thinking, yeah, this may work. It may at least double at the very least. So anyway, enough about Carvana, my forever failure as a trader. Friday, Fubo, Wendy's. Yeah. Light week. Should be fun. I'm not really interested in any, like I said, nothing's going to really move the market out of these names outside of AMD and Super Micro, but I think I'm optimistic that this is going to be a good week to trade, that we're going to have some fun. And then on the economic calendar, it's another light week. Like I guess the bigger stuff is going to be the following week. But not even though the Fed's blackout period, actually, is it still on this week? No, there are some speakers. Never mind. It's just a lighter week in general. So we'll see what dominates the airwaves this upcoming week. But for the most part, tomorrow's super, super light, just a 3 and 6 month bill auction, factory orders, not something that usually even moves the market after the open. So nothing really going on, pretty much a free trading day, as far as nothing with the economic releases to kind of give you a gotcha. Tuesday, we do have PMI and what is that? 52-week bill auction and a 3-year note auction. But for the most part, I mean, we do ISM services PMI and the PMI releases constantly. Nothing too chaotic, just something that obviously between these two 15-minute releases, 15 minutes after the bell and then 30 minutes after the bell, always just gives me a reason to be flat, just so I don't get stopped out on an NQ wick by 20 points because just the book gets thin. I just always hate those type of trades. So I usually always will stay flat for these still, but none of these are going to probably cause Armageddon. Wednesday, super, super light. Once again, just a 10-year auction, and Cook going to be talking at 1 o'clock Central Time. So 10-year, something to pay attention to if you're going to be trading around lunchtime, 12 o'clock Central. Just tends to be one of the ones that if it is a poor showing, may get a reaction. So, excuse me. I'm going to pause because I need a sip of water. This is what happens, guys, when you are rambling to yourself into the void. I know you guys are all here with me in spirit in the chat, but when you're rambling for an hour into the void, I can feel like my throat slowly closing up here. Sorry. All right. And then, excuse me. With last week's NFP and all the revisions, the employment data may get a little closer eye on things, especially revisions, I guess, that come out of said data. So on Thursday in the pre-market, we will have initial jobless claims at 7:30 and non-farm productivity quarter over quarter, unit labor costs, and continuing jobless claims. So not saying those are going to move the market more than they always do, but I don't know. Employment data may be the new eyeballs if it wasn't already. Pi, I'll get to your question in a moment. Let me just finish the economic releases. But I do see it. And then we will have Bostic speaking at 9 a.m. Central Time, Mausoleum as well at 9:20. And then we have a long bond auction at noon on Thursday. So, and then Friday, just Baker Hughes for our oil traders out there. But for the most part, as I said, super light week. We have CPI next week, so that should be fun. But pretty clear skies as far as economic releases and the gotchas that we usually get to keep an eye on and trade the fallout from at times when they're after the bell. So clear week, nothing too chaotic, anything. We've all traded through some of these before, so nothing weird. There will be new political political. Gosh, I can't read today, guys. There will be political new related. I think I know what you're saying. I think, yes, I agree with you. I think you will see more political based reactions and news from some of these reports from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics and things like that going forward. I would say that is probably very fair. I would imagine it's going to become a talking point, at least this week, next week, the job report Friday, as we kind of get into the news cycle this week. I'm sure that may dominate some of the airwaves at times. So it'll be interesting as we get more of those in the coming weeks, months as well. All right. So, Pi asked me a question. Nick, do you look at ATR? Do you have dynamic stop loss for days like last Friday? I have an ATR on my chart, on my execution chart. I don't know if it's on here. I think it gets deleted technically since we started the new session. So the one from Friday was there. It gets auto calculated for me. It's not something I like use as like, oh, okay, we're at the ATR low, I'm going to be looking for longs. I still historically, like you guys have seen the way I kind of structure, like when we get more of those outside based moves, those outlier type days like this, like when we start waterfalling, I'm not necessarily looking with ATR and data. I'm looking for volume based areas that I would potentially kind of be using as a stop loss or as a bottom type area that I'd be looking for, in theory, a reversal. Because as we know, we tend to, break balance and then return to an area of higher volume. We leave low volume nodes, we return to areas of higher volume. So that's kind of how I still gauge it. You had all of this structure kind of bottom forming going back to end of June, early July down here. One of the reasons this had an options based activity reason too, why I put this box there, but it was also with the logic of leaving this on here, is because of this type of volume build that we got. And then the continued initiation for those couple weeks. And then this basically acting as a top edge of that range. So I always would still lean on, when you get an outside move like Friday, on finding the next area of volume structure that kind of makes sense to base that, to use in conjunction with something like an ATR. And there's other, I guess, flavors that you could throw on that. And there's other things that I think I've been too lazy to throw on some of my charts that the lovely folks at OFL have put into some of their auto plot data with some of the new releases. So I need to still throw some of those on my chart too. But those have that kind of range bound activity. But I still, for the most part, will always base everything off, volumes structure to kind of make those type of decisions. All right. Yes is moving up. Yes, it is. NQ is as well, kind of coming into almost the 900. So we had that very quiet gap down. And for the most part, finding some buyers above the week open. But I don't know if I articulated them earlier in the show, but your week open on ES going to be, God, what is that? I don't want to give somebody the wrong number. Roughly the 62, 55, 56 area. NQs 850s, as Big Cat himself had predicted in the chat. I'm going to once again say that he did that before we actually called 850s. Good for him. That's why I listen to him more than a lot of other folks. So, those are your week opens. Obviously, I take this every Sunday, but just good areas to kind of watch, gauge reactions towards, use them as a pivot, use it as whatever. But I kind of like to watch and wait how price action approaches those levels, those spots in the week ahead, to just kind of gauge and potentially take trades off of as well. So with the large volume structure, is that a signal for you for longs or shorts? Just learning how you read your charts. I wouldn't say I use them for longs or shorts, because when I say like volume structure, like something like this, where you've got a ton of volume build, I mean, that doesn't necessarily tell me anything outside of there was a lot of interest in transacting from both sides in that area. So what that might mean is we may pause and consolidate in there. It also might mean that there was a ton of, since we were in a situation like this where we had continuation and another, week by week kind of build above that, let's call it high volume node that was sitting there, then that gives me logic of, okay, if we were to return there and consolidate, is there an opportunity for me to get long with, a group of buyers as their holding price there in the event that we were to break this structure? Since given all the volume that's kind of traded here over the last month plus, this is kind of what I was saying earlier. If we lose this spot, and that's kind of why my pivot's down here. If you start to lose this last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks of structure and volume here, and a good bulk of that is kind of trying to create a bottom in this spot. If we lose that and start to explore prices, let's say inside the 6220s, then I'm probably looking to ride this short for another, let's say, outside move. It really then would look like we're breaking this structure and are now in some sort of correction and are going to find the next higher area of interest in the auction, which, like I was saying, just based on the year-to-date's point of control being, in this general vicinity down here, if we were to lose the 6220, 6230s, there's a high probability that we probably are going to return up here towards the 6100s and perhaps come retest and play around with all of the volume year to date that has traded and transacted in that spot. That's how I kind of use it and read it. For breaks of balance, but breaks of structure like this, I'm kind of looking for the next area of stabilized balance structure where we were kind of in that price discovery mode trying to make a decision. So when you get those wider outside moves, that's kind of what I'm then searching for. And it could be back up here in the kind of 6290s, it's called 6300 area, like back in all this volume. It very much could be we peak, and if we were to return back up here, then we might be establishing a new home in this kind of 6300s area for the foreseeable future. Oh, yeah. You don't see anything structurally on the right here. I don't have this built. This volume profile here is basically I think this is the last like 5 or I might have done 15 days. I can't remember. It's not like year to date or a visible range on this one. So if it was, you would see. But if you were to, go into Ninja, go into TradingView, whatever it is you use for charting and kind of look at that year to date structure, you'll see what I'm talking about. Going straight to the 5990s, I can see it. Like I said, it makes sense if we are going to actually have some sort of a cool off and correction. I'm not saying it's going to happen this week, but us even peaking above here, returning to kind of these, whatever, the top edge of this old balance range and failing again, then yeah, I might say we're probably going to get that next leg lower. Who knows when it may come? It just happens to be coinciding with seasonality, a period of weakness that's usually in the market right now, and with this type of momentum. So put up or shut up time for sellers. Let's see if they got the cojones to actually push us back down towards that point of control for the year. That's what I'm looking for. If not, let's see if this 6260s hold, and we can potentially ride this up for at least cleaning up this structure back towards August open up here at 6360s. That's kind of why I'm gauging the last at least the next couple of days of structure is kind of gauging this as a reaction. And if we continue to just see it holding, finding buyers, then I'm looking to buy this for a rotation up here towards the 6350s. If not, look out below, and we probably are heading down here towards 6100s. If not, like I said, retesting towards that point of control much lower. I saying all this like we're going to get an outside move. God knows we're just going to chop in the bottom edge of this range and have a D-shaped profile this week, because why not? Why not just sell the vol and so let's sell volatility and just range this week after getting me excited from the last 2 sessions. That sounds about right. So with that, I'll let you all get out of here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on your Sunday evening. I will be back tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. So Please do tune in. I will be trading the open with Big Cat himself, Leo the Tiger. We will be looking for some trades, probably trading some NQ and ES, seeing what shakes out in tomorrow morning's open. And then if you miss me, don't worry. If you can't get enough of me, I don't know why you would. I will be back tomorrow afternoon as well to trade the close. So I look forward to hanging out with you guys a lot tomorrow. And everybody do please trade safe out there. If volatility is here to stay, it's going to be wild. You're going to see more, crazy rotations like we saw Thursday and Friday. So do trade safe, size down if you need to. If you're feeling hesitant, there's nothing wrong with sitting it out and waiting for things to calm down and stabilize a little bit. So everybody trade smart, trade safe this week, and I will see you all bright and early tomorrow to trade the open. Cheers, guys.